Greetings, friends, and welcome yet to another episode of Storytime. This is the series where I take you all on audio adventures as we listen into different stories and experiences. Well, on today's episode of Stories, we are traveling to some small towns. Small towns offer a great escape from the traffic and busy life of larger towns, but at the same time, they are full of many mysteries and experiences too. What sorts of experiences will we have in these small towns? Let's find out together, shall we? Very quickly, a huge thank you to my Uncle Gary for once again providing background footage for today's video. I love being able to work with my family and present these amazing scenes to you all, so it's quite the honor. Of course, if you haven't done it already, then make sure you have the notifications turned on for my videos. That way, you never miss another episode of Storytime. With that said, let's get on to the story, shall we? Enjoy. Number 1. This happened in the early 2000s when I was visiting my sister. As some background information, my sister was living in a small town in Alaska where the population was less than 1,000. Because this town was so small, there wasn't really much to do. Even so, it was a nice change from my busy life I had in Seattle. Another reason I ended up visiting my sister was because I finally had some time away from school. I just recently graduated from college. I've been looking to spend some time with my sister anyways. So I ended up leaving my house in Seattle and went to spend a month over with my sister. For the most part, everything was pretty normal. The only thing is, I may have underestimated the cold. Guess what? I ended up getting a fever. Well, I guess that's what I get for going outside with just socks. Well, fast forward to this night. Me and my sister were looking to go find some medicine at the store. Sadly, with it being so close to New Year's, most of the stores were already closed. With that, the quest to find the open store had begun. Since it was wintertime in Alaska, even at 7 p.m. everything was pretty much closed. After driving around to another small town, we actually found a store that was open. Once we arrived, we noticed something pretty odd. For starters, this store looked really old, but with it being the only one open, we'd take our chances. Another thing about this store was it was towards the very end of the town, and it was in a pretty bad neighborhood. Regardless, we exit the car and start heading over to the store. Now, I hadn't seen this at first, but I soon became aware of a van that had a man inside who appeared to be looking right at both of us. The reason I was able to see him was because they had their light on. This person will come into play soon. Anyways, like I mentioned, we make our way inside and are welcomed with the sight of this run-down looking store. The lights inside seemed to barely work, and most of the store was unorganized. While me and my sister make our way down the aisle, we're surprised with the sudden appearance of an older gentleman. From his name tag, he appeared to be an employee. "Well, hello there. Fancy to see the two of you in this part of town. So, what can I do for the two of you?" I think he meant to be friendly, but the way he said it really made it feel like the opposite. Still, we tell him about the medicine we'd been looking for, but he ends up saying to us, "I'm sorry, but we're actually sold out at the moment. There's another store that should be open. I'll go ahead and give them a call if you'd like." While he was doing the favor for us, it now became aware somebody else was entering the store. The store had one of those little bells that makes a noise anybody enters. Quickly, I look behind us, and I see another older gentleman. Let's just say his clothing had seen better days. He definitely gave me the mean eyes as he walked around to the other aisle. It was now me and my sister stepped closer to the front counter, ready to listen to the phone call. The man on the phone is talking to someone at the other store. He's explaining the situation in the meantime. All the while, I happen to look behind me, and guess what I see? There's that new person, and he was hiding behind one of the shelves. I guess my sister hadn't noticed it yet, but I knew he was definitely up to no good. Either way, the employee had finished calling, and he tells us, "All right, you two. The store on the other side of town is closing in 20 minutes. I told them you are on your way, so you better get going now." We thank him for his help, and now we make our way over to the car. Except now, something was different. Remember that older van from earlier? Well, now it was parked literally right next to us. My sister and I were pretty annoyed by it, but never really thought about it until what happens next. Carefully and slowly, we approach our car, only to see the van was empty. As we get inside, my sister and I happen to look in the rearview mirror, and now we can see that same mystery man slowly stumbling out from the convenience store and heading towards us. It was pretty obvious this van belonged to him because he was heading the same way as us. We waste zero time as we pull out of the parking lot, and we go down several darkened roads. While my sister was driving, we kept thinking about how strange the entire thing was, but we put it down to some weird coincidence. After all, we hadn't seen him anymore, so surely he was gone somewhere else, right? I wished that were the case. Thankfully, we did find the store that had the medicine, and we make our way inside. The nice thing about this store was it was a lot more nicer than the other one. How we had missed it in the first place, I have no idea, but we were finally where we needed to be at last. Once inside, we walk up to the cashier and we explain our situation. At this point, it was about 8:30 p.m., and the store would be closing soon. It was while grabbing what we needed and paying for it, we are made aware of a familiar face. There is our stranger friend once again, seemingly waiting for us at the corner of the store. I'm pretty sure the poor cashier was confused, because one look on our faces, he had no idea what we were reacting to. Well, we don't even take the time to wait for the change. We just tell him to keep it, and we make a mad dash outside. Once again, the familiar van had been parked right next to us. Looking back now, I'm thinking he'd been following us with the lights off. That's why we hadn't seen him or noticed him until now. Thankfully, this time around things were different. As we look towards the entrance of the convenience store, we can now see our so-called friend was occupied with a security guard that had been working there. After that night, we never did see him again, but it was something we would soon never forget. Also, I got better a couple of days later, and I returned back home about a week after. I guess if there's anything I can say, it's make sure you dress accordingly for the cold. Otherwise, you'll have to deal with driving around late at night and running into strangers. Number 2. So this was something that happened around 2005 or so, and I was living in a small town in the Pacific Northwest. I was 19 years old and had just started college. The reason I wanted to talk about this story is because looking back now, I'm not exactly sure what to think about it. Alright, so let's get some things out of the way. For starters, this was the time when me and my friends were just starting to get into cell phones. I remember we would spend countless hours messaging each other and sending funny pictures. Because of this, we would exchange numbers with multiple friends. I'm not sure why, but for us it was just the cool thing to do. Looking back, I don't think saying your number aloud in public was the smartest idea. You see, during a late night of playing video games, I received a message from an unknown number. The person who sent the message was claiming to be an old friend of mine. Now, I forget exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, "Hello, friend. Remember me? It's been such a long time, hasn't it? Your friend gave me your number, so awesome. Now we can talk." Of course, I wasn't sure which friend had given my number, so I messaged back with, "Wow, really? Which friend? By the way, who is this?" They respond back with, "Come on now, you already forgot about me? Don't be like that." I found it odd that they couldn't just tell me who they were, but I just ignored the message. I told myself I would worry about it the following day. So, the next day at school, I met up with my friends and I showed them the message I received. "Hey, did any of you give my number to somebody else? Why? What are you talking about?" "Alright, well, look at this message. Somebody sent this last night. They said they got my number from a friend. Are you sure it wasn't one of you?" They each looked at me surprised and said none of them had sent anything or given out my number. That was weird, so I put it down to a random wrong number and I left it at that. Later on that night, I once again received another message. "Hey, why did you ignore me like that? Anyways, can I come over to your house? I'd love to play sometime. I was pretty annoyed by this, and I'm not sure why I just didn't remove them from my phone. Regardless, I guess I was more curious than anything. I messaged back with, "Look, I don't even know who you are. Do you think you can stop and leave me alone already?" Now, why would I do that? After all, I can see your house. Nice apple tree you got in the front yard. Also, I like the roses you have planted near your door. They're so nice. I froze at that message. He then proceeded to describe my house perfectly. Instantly, I take a look out the window, and I see as a darkened old van drives down the street. It's now I try to calm myself down, but even then I felt like it was way too much. I messaged the person once again, but no longer do I get any sort of response. Of course, since this person hadn't actually done anything, there wasn't really much I could do. One thing I did do was I blocked the number and things finally seemed to have calmed down. Later, after things seemed to have calmed down, I was able to put the entire thing behind me. My main focus now was working on a project that I had due in a few days. I remember on this day in particular, me and my friends were taking a break from working and started playing soccer in the park. I just so happened to have sat down and I take a look at my phone. While I look towards it, I see an unknown number was calling me. Curious about it, I ended up answering. "Hello, who is this? Look, I think you might have the wrong number." I was welcomed with a voice I would never forget. "You know, it wasn't very nice of you to stop messaging me. The least you can do is let me play soccer with you." Alright, wait a minute. How in the world did he know I was playing soccer? I proceeded to call my friends over to me, and meanwhile, we're looking around everywhere. Once again, I see a familiar sight. There it is, the old vehicle from a week ago. Only this time, it was parked at the very end of the parking lot. Honestly, this was one of the times that I can truly say I was concerned beyond words. We ended up calling in about it, but before officers arrived, the van had gotten away. We did give them the description, and they told us they would keep a lookout for us. Months went by, and it seemed things finally calmed down. That's until one day, I received a note in my mailbox. The note said the name was Johnny, and inside it simply said, "I hope you haven't forgotten about me. I had to go away for a while, but I'll come back and visit you again really soon. So make sure to keep a lookout for me, will you?" That was enough for me. In the end, I ended up moving out of state, and the issue never happened again. Honestly, after months of that, I just wanted to put it behind me, and I was finally able to do so. Number 3. As some background information, this happened around 2015, when me and my girlfriend were living in a small town in northern England. I won't say the exact location, but I will say the population was less than 1,000. We ended up moving here mainly due to being tired of the busy life in London. Another great thing was, even though we were in the middle of nowhere, the slower pace provided a chance to relax and focus on our happiness. We were actually planning on getting married soon, so this was a plan we had for quite some time. Looking back, nothing seemed too out of the ordinary, and I never heard about anything really happening out here. I think the only thing I heard was somebody's car getting broken into at night and them taking their radio. Other than that, the only other concern I did have were the houses were far apart. This meant that if we ever needed something, the houses would be at least 15 minutes away. Even so, we didn't mind it too much. So, when we had moved in at the beginning, the snow season was just starting. During this time, we had quite the amount of snow and cold, dark nights. It was nice. It gave us an excuse to be inside and drink some warm tea. Moving on. Let me fast forward to the night of this happening. My girlfriend was working at night at a grocery store, and that left me alone with our pet dog, Abby. Abby was still a puppy and full of energy, so you can imagine she would like to go for walks, even if that meant it was freezing outside. This night, my girlfriend's boss told her that she'd be staying longer than usual. This meant that she wouldn't be returning until late. Well, since there was nothing else to do, I decided to go for one of my nightly walks with Abby. So it was a cool 47 degrees when we stepped out of the house as we made our way into the nearby woods. Now, before you say anything about walking in the woods alone, let me describe something about Abby. Even though she was still a puppy, she could bark really loud and chase off anyone. That's probably why I felt so comfortable in the woods. Anyways, before we did get to the entrance of the woods, I became aware of a shadow in the distance. It seemed weird to have seen this shadow at this time of night, so I called out, thinking it could have been a neighbor. They don't respond. Instead, they hurry on into the woods without saying anything. Weird, I thought to myself, but I blamed it on some random curious animal walking about. So, there we were. We were going down this familiar trail that led us into the dark night. The only light source I did have was my phone, but here's the thing. I'd forgotten to charge it. It only had about 10% left on it. I figured we wouldn't be out too long, so I told myself it should be enough light. The walking did seem to have calmed Abby down, because 10 minutes into the woods, she finally relaxed. She had been making a bunch of noise earlier, indicating she wanted to go outside. Looking back on the shadow from earlier, I now realized it was about something different. It was now in the point of the walk we proceed to go around a bend in the trail, and we're making our way back home. Well, all of a sudden, I end up hearing the sounds of branches moving. Soon, I'm met with an unforgettable sight. Standing right there next to the trees was what I'm assuming was an older gentleman, wearing dark clothing. It was now in this moment Abby started to growl, essentially telling me this person was up to no good. Not that it took a genius to realize that. I remember just standing frozen there for a few seconds. He takes off his hoodie, only to reveal he was wearing a mask. Suddenly, I see as he reaches to his back pocket, he appears to take something out. I don't even take a second longer to stay around. Me and Abby are now running full speed down the trail, and we're trying to get away. All the meanwhile, we are hearing these sounds of heavy breathing and yelling. While this was going on, all I could tell myself was not to look back. Unfortunately, I do just that, and now I see he was no longer alone. There he was, joined by somebody else. Seriously, unless they wanted to play tag, this wasn't any game I wanted to be part of. In what seems like forever, we make it to the opening in the woods, and I can see my house in the distance. Did I mention at this point my phone was pretty much at 1%? At any point, it was going to turn off. So, instead of running inside the house, I reach for my car keys and I press the button. From there, me and Abby jump inside the car and we proceed to drive out of there. We end up going to a neighbor's house, where I call my girlfriend and tell her everything about what happened. After that, I ended up calling it in, and the entire area was searched. Sadly, after all was said and done, they were never seen again, and I'm not exactly sure what they were planning. Number 4. This is something I haven't really had the time to share with many people, but I figured I'd go ahead and tell you all about it now. This happened about 5 months ago in a small town in Pennsylvania. So, before I start, let me give you a description of what was going on. Recently, my grandfather lost his house, and so he was staying at my house. I didn't mind having him around. It was just unfortunate he lost his house. Because my grandpa had recently moved in, we were still in the process of moving his things to my place. As for the farmland the house was located on, it sat abandoned. For whatever reason, it seemed nobody really wanted to buy the house. Not that I could blame them, part of it had fire damage. With that information out of the way, I remember we both sat in the living room, and he was telling me one of his many childhood stories. While he was in the process of doing so, he goes over to his room to get some old photo albums. Unfortunately, there was a problem with that. As it turned out, my grandpa hadn't gotten everything from his old home. It was now he remembered he kept them underneath the floor of the basement. There, he had a little box where he kept his most valuable things. He looked pretty sad about it, so I offered to go over there and pick them up. It seemed that as soon as I said that, he cheered up. Now, he was looking forward to showing me all these pictures from when he was younger. Alright, well, it was settled. I get in my car and I make the hour drive over to the now quiet land. I'll tell you, even though it was pretty quiet when my grandpa lived there, seeing it abandoned now definitely added to the overall atmosphere. I also figured since I would be in and out quickly, all I brought with me was my phone. So, right as I pull up to the old driveway, I am welcomed with the sight of an older looking vehicle. I'll admit, it was strange seeing it, but I didn't really pay attention to it in that moment. Looking back now, that was my first sign somebody else was here. Regardless, I'm now walking inside, and I'm going down these lonesome hallways. Once I reach the basement door, I start making my way down. I'm not sure why, but as soon as I opened that door, I was able to hear what sounded like light footsteps upstairs. I even heard the sounds of whispering. I figured I was just imagining things, so I ignore it and make my way down. Once in the basement, I look around and make my way over to where my grandpa had described. It was actually easy to find, so I pull aside part of the floor and I find the box my grandpa had mentioned. It's cool my grandpa had something like this. It's one of the reasons why I have my own little box too. Moving on. Right as I'm about to leave the basement, I hear something that made me freeze. A loud coughing sound at the corner of the room. I looked around and I tried to tell myself it was just my nerves. It's then I see as a person steps out from the corner of the dark room, and now they're starting to make their way towards me. Quickly, I make my way up the stairs as I can hear this person stumbling around. Once I reach the top of the stairs, I am welcomed with yet another sight. Standing there at the top of the stairs is another person. Now they were making their way down. I don't even bother to say anything. I run out the door and I make my way inside the car. Thank goodness those people weren't quick on their feet, because I'm out of there right away. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end. While going down the road, I become aware of the headlights in the distance. As they got closer, I recognized the vehicle I had seen earlier. For miles, they end up following me. That's before they just turn back and go the way they had come from. Of course, once I got home, my grandpa was pretty worried about it, but he was happy nothing had happened. I don't know who they were and why they were there to begin with, but next time, I'm not going to walk into an abandoned building alone. Then again, I'm going to avoid them altogether. Number 5. Growing up in a small town in Michigan, I never really expected anything to happen. I moved into a small town where, as far as I knew, it was pretty quiet. The only thing was my neighborhood had houses that were pretty far apart. Because of this, I never really did see my neighbors, and I would see them less during the nighttime. By the way, this happened back in the late 90s. Since I didn't have a car at the time, I would mostly rely on getting to my job at the coffee shop on a bicycle. It was nice because I enjoyed the morning fresh air and the scenery around me. Like you can probably guess, I worked in the daytime and I was off by mid-afternoon, usually around 3 p.m. From there, I'd get home at around 4, and from there, I'd take the time to work on my artwork. I remember at the time I was really into watercolors, and I loved drawing mountains and lakes. I know it might sound boring to some, but it was fun for me. That's besides the point. This one week, I remember one of my co-workers had called in sick. They couldn't work that afternoon. Normally, I like staying to my routine, but my boss did offer me extra hours. Now, I did think about it and I told myself I could use the extra money. So, I offered a cover for my co-worker Ashley. Little did I know, this would turn out to be the beginning of my experience. For the most part, this afternoon went well. I ended up switching my usual schedule at home, and I worked on my artwork in the morning. Once it was around 1:30 p.m., I made my way into town. That's where I worked until 9 p.m. By the time I closed the store and all, it was close to 9:30 p.m. Obviously, it was pretty lonesome around town. With the stars and moonlight above me, I now began the half-hour bicycle ride back home. The only thing is, something about the ride home felt off. While I normally had no problem getting to work during the daytime, this night felt different than others. I think about it and I blame it on all the stories my coworkers were talking about. Seriously, they watch way too many movies. It was when I was about 5 minutes away from home, I saw it. As I made my way down this alleyway, I see a darkened van parked right there in the middle. I picked up my pace as I made sure to keep a lookout. Since I was so distracted with it, I was surprised at what happens next. Seemingly out of nowhere, a man jumps out from the corner of the alley, almost causing me to fall off my bicycle. This of course forced me to stop for a second, as I hear him call out to the van further behind me. In that moment, I focus back on what I was doing, and I start getting away. Just like that, I can hear the engine of the van start up, and now they're making their way down the alley. For the next 5 minutes or so, I'm doing all I can to get away from them, as I can see the van keeping up pace with me. Finally, I find a backyard to hide in. That's where I can see the van drive down the street a few times. Honestly, I didn't want to just go home right away. I was concerned they would find out where I lived. Instead, I stood there behind a tree as I waited for what seemed like hours. Finally, they left. Once I hadn't seen them anymore, I make my way back home, where immediately I locked the door behind me. That still wasn't the end. As I looked out the window, I see as the van is slowly driving down the street. I was seriously so nervous at that point. Had they seen me go down my street or something? Well, it doesn't seem like it, because I saw as they drove down the street and then out of my view. Many months went by, and nothing like that happened again. I'm not sure who they were, and maybe they were just some random people in town that night. But regardless, I just hope I never do see them again. Number 6. I'm not exactly sure how to describe this, but I'll admit, it was definitely one of the most strangest things that's ever happened to me. Alright, let me give you some background information. When this took place, I was visiting my uncle, who lived in a small town in Arizona. Out there, he was surrounded by miles of desert and farmland. Seriously, this town was the kind where unless you knew about it, you wouldn't even know it was there. Because of how small the town was, everybody pretty much knew each other. You wouldn't really have to worry about being outside at night. So, let's fast forward to the evening this occurred. While staying with my uncle was fun, I'd wanted to go take some photos. I was really into photography at the time. I was interested in going to this abandoned car park. It was located a couple of miles outside of town, and it sounded like a wonderful idea. My uncle was actually working later than usual that night, so I figured I could go there in the meantime. After that, I could meet him back at the house. With that said, I locked the house and I made the walk on over. For the most part, the afternoon was pretty quiet, and I only saw a few people. Moving on, once I passed a large field, I arrived at this fenced-in area. That's where I saw a sign that said "Do not enter." Of course, you can imagine I do the complete opposite, and now I'm making my way in there. It was nice. There was a bunch of old cars and other things, and immediately I start taking pictures. Not even a few pictures in, I suddenly hear movement. I thought it was weird since I had seen nobody at all. I looked over to my side and I noticed something had fallen on the ground. Leaving it at that, I proceed to walk around some more and I take a few more photographs. With the sun now going down, I decided I had my fill and I proceeded to make my way to the exit. What should have been a normal exit turned into the complete opposite. At the far end, I can see as a group of people are stumbling around, each appearing to be holding various tools of different sizes. Their clothing looked pretty old, and I was assuming they lived out here. While looking over at them, I happened to have stepped on an empty water bottle. That caused them to stop what they were doing, and now they were starting to run after me. Instantly, I realized what's going on, and I'm running around this empty place, trying to find another exit. One of them yelled something out, but I couldn't understand what they said to me. At this point, I had no idea what they might be doing, and fortunately enough, I do find a place where I can get out. Quickly, I go on through, and I'm on the other side. That's where I run all the way back to my uncle's house without once looking back. Yes, I know, not like many other stories, but it was an experience in a small town I would soon never forget. Sweet, looks like you've arrived to the end of today's stories. I thank you all for tuning in and listening. I hope you enjoyed those stories. So tell me, which one was your favorite? Let me know down below. Also, do you live in a small town? If so, any experiences? Make sure to submit it if you'd like. I would love to check it out. Yes, my friends, this is the end of today's adventures, but don't worry, we'll be back soon with even more. Until then, make sure to stay around and watch any other videos you might have missed. And of course, remember to have yourself a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Take care.